I'm 100% talking on mute and have been for several minutes. So speakers, things like that. So we wanted to host this as an opportunity in the lead up to NPC26 session proposals, that portal opening pretty soon. And just host an opportunity for folks to ask questions, to maybe, pitch some ideas, brainstorm their session ideas, maybe get some connections for speakers, or just ask questions. We definitely have some tips and recommendations that we can go through, that the Women in Planning Division has sort of picked up along the way with our experience submitting proposals for sessions. So I'm just gonna go through today the basics. I didn't want to kind of skip over the fundamentals in case there's folks who have never gone through this process before. Just wanted to make sure we hit on some of the key requirements. Definitely walk through the dates of the milestones along the way for the process. Talk through the options that APA provides for sessions. What you might be thinking about as you're crafting your idea and getting your session proposal ready, the different program areas and tracks that APA has available, the elements specifically of the session proposal itself, what that looks like, what you can expect, what you might want to start thinking about now in the lead up to that portal opening. And then also some tips for success, some next steps, and then depending on the size of our group, maybe we can have a group conversation or breakouts if we have a lot of folks based on the topics that people are interested in digging into. So just kind of the highest level overview. So this is the beginning of the process of session proposal and program curation for the National Planning Conference. The conference this year, the in-person conference scheduled for end of April 25th through the 28th in Detroit. And then there's also the online conference, which APA has been hosting for the last few years, that came out of COVID and stuck around. So another opportunity for folks to participate, which is nice, especially if you're not able to travel for whatever reason. So this year there is an option to sign up for updates right on this conference page. So if you go to planning.org/conference, there's a button that says learn more. And if you fill that out, you will get some reminders with the different dates and deadlines, and I'm sure they'll send other opportunities and information along the way. But I don't remember that in the past, so that's sort of a nice thing to do, and I would recommend folks go over and sign up for that. And then there's also a call for proposals and reviewers. I'll talk a little bit more about session reviewers in a minute, but you can get a little bit more information by clicking through to the call for proposals and reviewers, sort of high level information, not quite the level of detail to get ready to prepare each element of the application. But we'll definitely talk through what has been requested in the past for all of this. So key dates today, I would say go over and sign up for those NPC26 updates on that website. July 30th, the call for proposals officially will open, so you can begin submitting and looking at the actual application or session submission form that we'll need to fill out this year. At the same time, they're also opening that reviewers portal. So everyone in APA has the opportunity to volunteer to review proposals for the conference. I would highly recommend that everyone do this. It's not only good for experience and getting some exposure to different session proposals. You can see how people are putting them together. You'll get some examples of really great proposals. You'll probably also see some not so great ones. So maybe you'll have some takeaways of things that work or don't work. It also, if you're AICP certified, you can use that for volunteer for CM credits. So that is like a nice chunk of hours that you can put towards your credit maintenance. And I just think that, if there's topics you're interested in, it's really helpful to have folks who are passionate about those subjects, and planning issues and, programmatic areas, making sure that you all have a voice in that process. So there's a pretty short form to apply to be a reviewer, but I definitely recommend folks do that if you have the time. It's not a huge lift. It's like a 2-week turnaround. You review like 8 or 10 proposals, and it usually goes pretty quickly. But I definitely recommend that if you're able to. So then on the 20th of August, that is the APA deadline to submit your proposals. So at that point, you need to have everything finished, including, your full session proposal write-up and all of your speakers. I'll talk more about that in a minute. At the end of August through the beginning of September is that peer review period where the proposal reviewers go through and rate applications based on a set of metrics that are pretty standard, making sure that the session as proposed is meeting the different requirements and qualifications that APA has and hitting, the expectations for what professional development should look like at the level of the planning conference. There's a few different levels of review, so I'll talk again more about this in a minute, but you can submit sessions that fulfill criteria for mandatory CM credits, for example. Those go through a little bit more of a rigorous review process. So definitely, by the time October, December comes around, the conference committee puts those proposals together, looks at the scores, and curates a program. They try to balance the different tracks and topics. They don't want to have 99% of the sessions focused on one topic. There's, I think, maybe 8 or 10 different tracks that we can look through that APA is looking for sessions in. I'll talk a little bit more about that too. And then usually around January is when the emails go out for notifications of session acceptance. They will open the NPC registration, and essentially APA doesn't really consider the session formally accepted until all of you and all of your speakers have registered for the conference and are good to go there. So there is a requirement that, if you submit and all of your, you want to make sure all of your speakers are committed. So thinking about, the type of session you might want to propose, APA has a lot of different options. They're always kind of, adding new ones or making changes, which is good. I would say, be thoughtful about the type of session that you propose, the format, whether you are thinking about regular just CM credits or a session for mandatory CM credits. I think there's ways to be strategic about this. Some people won't submit sessions for those mandatory CM credits just because there is a bit more of a rigorous review process. Mobile workshops take a little bit more organization and planning. There's, a few different types of sessions. I know, for example, the speech sessions are fairly, that's a popular thing because it's shorter. The session submission's a little shorter, less of a lift. There's a new type of format called a fishbowl, which I did last year. It was really fun where, folks can kind of come up and rotate through and actually speak on different topics. You can have more of a traditional panel where you have a question and answer with varying levels of engagement from your audience. You can definitely do like a traditional presentation. And then also there's a longer type of session called a learning lab, or has been in the past, that is more of like a deep dive into a topic, usually involves some sort of hands-on activity. So, think about your topic, whether or not you can be in person or online, and, what your goals are and how you might best accomplish those through all of these various options. So then APA has different tracks or program areas. These are the ones that they're going to be calling for this year for FY26. So there is a topic area focused on climate change, energy, and environment. There's one, economic trends and transformations, emerging and evolving technology, inclusive planning for social change, Navigating the political landscape, upskilling for the future. That one's really more focused on like professional development. Housing challenges and solutions, which has been a focus area for APA for several years, and then transportation and infrastructure. Several of these topics definitely lend themselves to some of those mandatory CM credits. So for example, the sustainability and resilience mandatory CM credit, or the equity credit or the law credit kind of fit into some of these categories. So maybe think about that too. There's definitely, I would say, just based like anecdotally, seems to have been a big push towards sessions focused on climate change, resilience, the environment, things like that. I have a feeling we may see more sessions focused on navigating the political landscape this year. That is my gut instinct, just with all of the changes that have been taking place. So there's a lot of room to be creative. Even if you don't have a session that you feel like fits perfectly in a category, that's okay. You definitely have some room to be flexible in your description of the session and how it's meeting, some of the goals of these areas. So when you submit a proposal for NPC, it's usually in some sort of online form. I highly recommend kind of doing a copy paste of the required elements that you have to submit, so that way you have your documentation, and you can edit and you can work together with other people on your proposal. But typically APA is looking for, the selections for those session types, the program area. Speakers is a whole, this has been done a little bit differently by APA in the last few years. So, in the past, you were able to submit a session that was more sort of an idea and then recruit all of your speakers. There's now, you're now required to submit all of your speakers when you submit your session proposal. So if you are going to have a panel, make sure you have everybody's information. They are going to have to also go into the APA submission portal to provide some information, like their APA number, and provide additional documentation that, they're committed to participating in the session. So just make sure folks know that and that you're coordinating that. That definitely can be a place where you get hung up if you're, kind of waiting till the last minute to submit your proposal, and you're not able to nail people down. You're herding cats, trying to chase people. So definitely give yourself enough time for that. APA does ask you for, a session title. These vary in creativity and, descriptiveness. You only have like 8 words to work with, so you definitely do need to be a little creative. But, obviously something that speaks to the topic that you're going to be presenting, something that catches people's attention is always a good option, because you're, obviously going to be competing at the conference for attention with a lot of other great sessions. And you want to make sure people know what to expect from yours. The next piece is what they call like a short description, which is essentially like your elevator pitch. So that's kind of the thing if you're, perusing the conference program. It's that short description, which is the first thing that you see when you're looking through the different sessions to get information about them. So that's sort of the too long didn't read summary of what your session's about, what people will leave your session with, and what the goals you hope to accomplish through your presentation. And then there's like a longer description where you go obviously more into exactly what you're going to present, how you're going to present it, different format types of things. There's a few different questions based on the type of session that you're proposing. So for example, if you were proposing a learning lab, you would have to describe some of those activities that you intend to do with your participants. Audience engagement is a specific required description. So think about ways that you are going to engage and bring your audience along as participants in the session. So whether that's through some sort of interactive Q&A, or just even like show of hands, or APA now has software platforms that allow some like real-time polling, things like that. people can use their phones to participate in that. So think about, ways you might be able to pull people into the content. And then probably most importantly, and like maybe, just based on my experience as a session reviewer, this is probably like the part that people I feel like punt on a little bit, but these learning outcomes, APA does take them or look at them, seriously. So this is sort of like the action oriented, takeaways that people are going to leave your session, your presentation with. What can they bring home? What are the takeaways for practice? How can X case study be applied in, the audience member's own community? So, think about those learning outcomes. If you're like struggling with a topic and you can't get to those learning outcomes, like maybe rethink how you're approaching the topic. I would say instead of like, kind of like skating on the learning outcomes, sometimes they tend to be a little like superficial. So think about how you can set yourself up for like really kind of nailing home how your session is going to equip planners to practice better or be or develop professionally in a unique way. Mobile workshops are a little different from all of this. So if you have questions about those specifically, we definitely can address them, but they are like a whole separate type of submission with like, a budget and a schedule. So we can chat through that, but I didn't want to go through it unless folks had like specific questions about that. We can get there when we go to the Q&A. So then we sort of like crowdsourced some recommendations for, what should you be focusing on when you're thinking about submitting a proposal, or maybe submitting a proposal or getting your proposal ready, thinking about how to craft a proposal that has the highest chance of success. The first thing that a lot of folks thought of was like volunteer to peer review those proposals, because it really does, give you some access and exposure to how a great session proposal comes together, what the elements are that really, tie it together and sell it to a reviewer, the types of, the scoring mechanisms specifically that reviewers are looking for. And, it helps you kind of write your proposal a little bit to that process to make it easy for session reviewers to score you higher, instead of like making them work hard to like find the things that that they have to check the boxes on. Curating a diverse panel is huge. APA has been pushing this pretty hard the last few years and encouraging session proposers to reach out to the population-based divisions of APA if they need speakers. I think another tip on here is like, don't be afraid to reach out to speakers that maybe you don't know personally or that are like outside of your network. I think people are, I don't think anybody would be like offended that you were like, wow, I thought you would be great to speak about this topic. I think people would, feel encouraged by that and appreciate the recognition. So I would definitely like encourage you to think about, who can you bring into the topic that can expand the presentation. So and making sure when you look at your list of speakers that they're not, reflective of one group or one interest or anything like that. So making sure you have a good mix of experience and perspectives, I think, is really helpful. So focusing on those takeaways, I think this goes back a little bit to the learning objectives that APA is looking for. This is really like, this is sort of why we come to conferences, right? What are we going to learn that's going to help us be better planners, or help us better serve our communities, or develop ourselves professionally? So really think about, how can you structure what you're offering in a way that, again, makes it easy for people to kind of pick that information up and bring it home with them and apply it in their own communities. Another tip was to avoid both overrepresented and like super niche topics. So like, there's definitely some areas of planning that are really unique. I would say because of this particular, national conference setting, you would probably want to think a little bit more broadly about topics and areas of expertise that apply more broadly that is going to, attract a large cross section of members. I think though also there's like overrepresented topics. So like you don't want to like write yourself out of the game entirely by, throwing into the pile with the most competition. So like maybe think about conferences you've been to in the past, things you wish you saw more of, or things that, you've heard people say like, wow, I really wish they had a session on X, thinking about ways to elevate some of those topics that are, kind of less represented at the conference. Again, like making sure you're being action oriented with those learning objectives, like don't skate by those. APA either links to or used to like literally give out a list of verbs that you could use when you're crafting those learning objectives. So, think about that action oriented language. I think again, another way to like be strategic about your session proposal and thinking about, how can I increase my chances for success? Think about those mandatory CM credits. They do require a little bit more planning, forethought, making sure you're kind of hitting some key targets. But I do think that overall, there's typically less representation in some of those, and they're always really popular sessions. I mean, I know if you like myself, if you go to the law sessions, like they put it in like the biggest, most giant room because there's like 2 of them, and everybody needs the credit. So think about how you might like leverage your topic in a way that can hit some of those mandatory requirements for folks. If you're able to, ask someone to review your proposal. I think it's helpful for any type of writing to get somebody else's eyes on it, and just ask for feedback. Make sure that you're being clear about your purpose, your goals, those learning objectives, and then take that feedback. Give yourself some time to do some editing before the submission deadline hits. Thinking about creatively engaging the audience. I think again this has been another focus area of APA over the last few years. Thinking about how to not just like talk at people, but to bring folks along. I think we know that helps the learning process. I know, in the women in planning division, a lot of like what I hear is feedback we get is like people like to leave with like something, whether that's like a action plan or an idea or like a literal like next step, like do this if you want to, accomplish this other thing. So, figuring out ways that you can bring your audience along with you, I think is really helpful. Always helpful to team up with somebody who's done this before. So if this is like your first time thinking about this, maybe recruit some folks who who have, submitted a session successfully. I think you'll get some tips, or even if they're not like interested in participating, like asking them to maybe review for you or just provide or, connect you to different speakers, people who might be interested in supporting your topic. I think addressing emerging issues is always like really interesting too. So, is there something that's like happening right now that isn't like well represented in the planning literature or media that, or have a feeling people are going to want to be talking about, or maybe like a planning topic that's just like hard or doesn't really get a lot of attention, but is definitely like an issue that is, widely applicable, something that might be something to think about exploring. Thinking about, again, topics, like I think APA's trend report is a really good place to look for ideas, that those are going to be what APA is focusing on. If you haven't looked at it, it's a really good sort of, barometer of the different types of dynamics we should be paying attention to. They always present several sessions on the annual trend report, like specifically, but honing in on one of those topic areas might be a good way to set your session apart, or even connecting your topic to something in the trend report also is probably a good way to boost your session a little bit. And then listen to what your colleagues are talking about or people in your community. Those are going to be the things that people are going to be looking for at the conference. I think we touched on like the transferability of the things you're presenting. I think you want to make sure that when you submit a session that it's something that, people are going to be able to use or take away, even if, it's not exactly the same, whatever the lessons learned are, are something that other people in other communities will be able to apply in a way that's meaningful. And then my number one, like biggest piece of advice, I think, is just don't wait till the last minute, especially if you're like looking for speakers. People bail out, people don't reply, people say yes and then change their mind, people say yes and then like disappear. I like invite more people than you can accommodate because you're probably going to lose a few along the way. You definitely don't want to scramble. So I would say like now is a great time to start doing that before like that proposal portal even opens. And just get those folks lined up, especially if you know that you like want someone specific and know what you want to talk about and have some ideas. Make sure they're available during the conference. It's harder than it sounds, and it always like even going into it prepared feels a little bit like a struggle every year. Let's see. So speaking of takeaways and next steps, so these are kind of like the things that women in planning that I, as a person who has done this many times, would sort of recommend going through over the next couple weeks as you're getting ready, as before this proposal portal opens up officially, while you still have some time. Summer is a little hard with folks who are traveling, and I know FAICP nominations are due, so other folks are busy. But kind of think about these things and how you can best set yourself up for success. And then after we go through these, I think we have lots of time for questions and answers. And I'm curious to know what other folks are thinking, or if people have ideas or specific requests for speakers that we can help, link each other to. That's sort of the purpose of this event. So number one, I would definitely recommend just going to planning.org/conference, register for those updates so you don't miss anything. That'll keep you up to date in case deadlines change, etc. You'll get that notification when the portal opens. Definitely start brainstorming session topics and those learning objectives. Like, again, if you have like a topic, but you can't explicitly link it to like some takeaway or like goal of the session, I would say like maybe think about something else, or how you can like restructure the session to better to be more sort of tangible in that way. Think about like how you can match your topic with a certain type of session format or like a learning track. What makes the most sense based on what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe you're just like dipping your toe in, you're not really sure like if this is for you. Maybe think about one of those speed share sessions. They're quick, they're like 15 minutes. They usually group together a few different speakers in a similar topic area. So that's kind of like a great way to just, try it out, see how it feels. Or like if you're like, I am like full in on this topic and I'm going to like walk people through this awesome exercise, maybe like a learning lab is for you. Definitely start recruiting your speakers, especially if you like have a topic, you're ready to go, and you're just like trying to get some folks on board. Earlier the better. Get everybody lined up, make sure they know exactly what they need to do if they commit to being part of the presentation. Start like drafting your proposal. You can kind of like start, even though the portal hasn't opened, think about an elevator pitch, think about like how you're going to go through the session, how you can engage the audience, just get yourself like mentally prepared. I definitely recommend volunteering to review proposals. That happens, after the submission window this year, but it will definitely help you in the future as you are, becoming a more seasoned conference proposal session proposal submitter. I think it's really helpful, and I think just gives you some exposure to all of the different topics and ideas. Keep working on your proposal, go back and forth, ask a friend to review it, get some feedback. If you have speakers you're bringing in, ask them for their feedback. Think about, make sure you have time, like the time commitment to prepare the presentation in advance of the conference. It definitely takes some forethought and planning to be ready. And definitely reach out to our division if you need help. Like if you just need somebody to like read through something, if you need help looking for speakers, if you're like, I have this idea, but I don't know where to start. We have a lot of folks with a lot of experience who have done this many times, decades probably of combined experience, reviewing and submitting and presenting. So, we want to be a resource to our members and anyone else. I would say, especially if you have a topic that feels like women in planning relevant too, we're always happy to support and help develop those proposals. Let's see, I'm going to go back for a minute. And then also, in case I forget to mention it later, if you do submit a session and it is accepted, definitely let us know, because we're able to endorse sessions, and that just gives your session a little bit more exposure in the conference program. So we're still a relatively small group. I'm going to actually stop sharing this screen, maybe. I'm not. Sorry, I've been using Teams for so long that now I've seemed to have forgotten how to use Zoom. So I think we could just open it for conversation. So I don't know if folks came in with like specific questions looking to get answered, or if like you have an idea that you want to pitch, or if you're just like, I don't know where to start. I think I'll just open the floor, if that makes sense.
So, hi, so
Hi.
this is Eileen Delatorre. I'm with the city of Decatur, Georgia. And there's a couple of things I think I'd like to pitch. And it's so we recently became a child-friendly city. I think we're only one of like 3 in the US or something like that. And then we also have a tree ordinance that is very it's nationwide. It's pretty well known and respected, and a lot of other cities are looking to kind of copy that. And I was thinking, so because there's just, it's like the city, and there's a few different things that, I thought it would be kind of interesting to talk about. I'm wondering if maybe the fishbowl concept would be the best option for that, because it's like the umbrella of this is the city, and then these are the different things that we're doing within the city.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think the child-friendly city idea is really interesting, and I actually like could connect you with several people who might be interested in like talking about that globally, and how that looks like in planning. If you're interested in that, like I definitely think that could be like a bigger topic for sure, and it seems like a lot of people are interested in that. I know
Okay.
it's a topic that I've seen like a few maybe like learning labs focused on, or like mobile workshops, but I've never seen like that designation before. So that's pretty cool. I think people
Okay.
would really be into that. I don't know what other folks think.
I could definitely, yeah. So, I mean, would it be possible then
Is Megan
to,
Booth still on? Megan, are you still on? I saw her pop in.
Yeah, I'm still on. I think it would be really interesting to get a panel together, maybe moderated by like me and Corinne
Mhm.
of, and we did a fishbowl last year, And fishbowl might be kind of hard for what she's wanting to do because you
Uh-huh.
like tap people in and you tap people out. Whereas I think people would be really interested in how you became a child-friendly city,
Mhm.
how you got your city council on board, um, and like the resistance to that, because I think a lot of planners out there want to get their youth involved and go that direction, but there's that resistance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think that would be really interesting. But yeah, I would be happy to help, and we can, you know, talk to Corinne too.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So
Boulder,
Megan, do you want to introduce yourself and why you're interested in this topic?
sure.
Thank you.
Oh, I can't start my video. That's okay.
It's all right.
So Megan, I'm a planner at Salt Lake City, principal in the Salt Lake City Planning Division. But in my undergrad, I took an interest in youth engagement and started Little City Walks, which are neighborhood walks to teach children about planning. Um, I kind of put that on hold after the pandemic, but it's still a great concept, or I did, just to get planners out with youth in their city. But I've recently joined Youth Engagement Youth Engagement Planning under Corinne. So I've helped her do a few workshops, and Caroline, you made me feel a little old because I was like, I've been doing this for 10 years now. My last presentation, my first presentation was in 2016. So 2026 will be 10 years. So yeah, I'm excited, but that's my intro and my interest in that. So
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah,
I
I
was
think
going
that would be
to
cool. Go
add
ahead.
that I think Boulder, Colorado, I wanted to get them involved last year because it was in
Mm.
Denver, but they're doing a really interesting thing with their youth as well. So,
Okay.
Hi, this is Tippy. I just wanted to also give some feedback on this panel. NPC tends to score panels higher if you have participants from different cities, different regions, different sectors. So if you could team up with one of the other cities, I just looked it up, so either Houston and or Minneapolis, to do a whole panel where all three of you or two of you share your experience getting designated by UNICEF with this type of kid-friendly, child-friendly city, I think that would be a really, really strong panel as well.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. And is there anything against submitting proposals for different ideas, like one person submitting different things?
No, because as of right now, when you review a proposal, it's like blind, right? Like you don't, it's actually one of the things that people have sort of like complained about because you don't really know who is proposing things. So I don't think, like, I think they have a limit, like how many you can actually present, but I don't know that there's a limit on how many you could submit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Margaret, do you know anything about the child-friendly city designation?
I do not, but
Okay.
give me a minute and I can look it up and find the person and connect her.
Okay. Margaret's our Houston connection. Very cool. I love that. I think that's a really great idea. And I think that would be an awesome panel because I agree with Tippy. It's definitely good to have like different experiences. I think that's a really like good cross section of the country too, for different areas and what folks might be interested in.
and then Corinne would be our Minneapolis connection, I
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know if she knows who is managing that. We can ask her for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Neat. Did other folks come in with ideas or have questions?
I actually have a list of ideas that I'm working
Yay.
on. I always have ideas, even if I'm not the expert. So it's interesting because sometimes, you know, if you want to put together a panel that
Yeah.
you want to see at NPC, that's always a good thing. But sometimes you can be a moderator. I've done that before.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yep.
sometimes you kind of have to find people and hand it off. But I have from my list here, if anyone has connections or is interested, um, I had talked to my contact in the Hawaii chapter. I guess for those of you who don't know me, I'm the past president for the APA Utah chapter, and I'm on the chapter president's council executive committee this year. So with the APA Hawaii chapter, we're trying to put together something on disaster recovery and resilience, especially maybe even specifically fire disaster recovery and resilience with LA now. Unfortunately, their session proposal shockingly didn't get accepted for last year. Uh,
Woof.
right at the same time that the LA fires were happening. I guess this year, that's this year. Yeah. So I think it would be stronger to team up with other cities and other areas on those types of topics. So at the very least, we're probably going to reach out to California on that one. And that's one I probably won't be a part of, but just trying to help facilitate. One that I am putting together as a moderator is on data centers. This is an emerging trend in land use. I won't even say emerging technology, but with
Mhm.
AI increasing in a huge amount, like companies like Meta and Google are expanding their data centers in kind of rural areas that don't have a lot of water or power in terms of infrastructure, and it's causing a lot of issues in places like here in Utah. So I've got someone and some Meta contacts from Eagle Mountain. I just toured the Meta data center that they installed here in the last 5 years. And then Wyoming, I have the planning director from Wyoming who's working on another Meta data center in his region. And then potentially I'm going to include someone from Oklahoma. So I don't know if anybody else has experience or wants to participate in discussing like land use impacts and implications for data centers, but that's probably my primary focus this year. And then the last idea I had is I'm helping to put together a couple topics on mega events. I've presented in San Francisco on Olympic legacy planning. But with everything coming up in LA, I think for next year, a couple of me and my colleagues want to put together some sessions on Los Angeles, because Los Angeles has a World Cup,
Mhm.
Super Bowl, and Olympics coming up in the next 3 years alone, as well as one on the World Cup, since it's being hosted all over North America in different cities. Just trying to see if there's interest in talking about, you know, what cities are doing to prepare for something that big, but also that spread out this time. So those are my ideas so far.
Those are great. Yeah, that mega event one is really interesting to think about because there's so many like, you know, the transportation angle, the environmental angle, the, you know, economic development angle, like
The adaptive reuse angle too, like
yup,
what do you do after it's there?
yes. Yeah, that is really interesting.
I had a question.
Mhm.
You mentioned that housing has been covered, over the last few years, and I'm just wondering, is that a topic that is still a good topic to present, or is it kind of overdone at this point?
I think it is because it remains one of APA's, like, at least in my perspective, like a core focus for them. You know, with this housing accelerator that they've had the last few years. I think it's, you know, it's certainly something that impacts every community, right? Like, so I think housing is sort of going to be a perennial topic. And I don't like it's been a focus, but I wouldn't say that it's necessarily been like overrepresented in sessions.
Thank you
So
for
I
that. I
would agree with,
appreciate it.
I would agree with Caroline on that. My suggestion would be though, be really tangible in
Mm.
what your session topic talks about. Specificity on what to do, how to assess it, that type of thing, not just conceptualizing, we have a housing problem in the United States,
Right.
but we have solved our housing problem because we have done this.
Oh, good to know, Tippy. Thank you. Yeah, Margaret, definitely agree with that. I think I'm trying to think like, yeah, I've seen a few like very targeted conversations that seem to be like well attended. You know, whether it's like looking at housing from like a demographic perspective or, you know, what types of solutions like housing physical structure solutions or zoning changes. So definitely. Jennifer, I see your comment. Are there like any specific topics that you think folks would be interested in or that you think are like worth exploring or that might lend themselves to like a panel or a session? If you're able to respond.
Well, there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's so
I'm
many,
sure.
there's many options. So I guess, you know, it kind of depends on what approach folks are going for.
Mhm.
It could be tied to, I think it was noted in the chat that it's a legislative priority. So it could be tied to zoning reform, which is the specific priority, or it could be tied to sort of like any one of the topical areas or like pillars of the playbook, like land use and zoning, regulatory reform, construction and development and finance, and you know, and the like sort of partnerships piece. So there are many different approaches outlined in the playbook, and I think they're all pretty compelling. I guess one suggestion might be to focus on partnerships because that's kind of the direction that the accelerator is moving in, is how to form and expand upon either create new or expand upon existing partnerships in order to accelerate supply. So that if anybody has an example of that in progress, that could also be compelling and kind of more aligned with where things are going.
Trudy, did you have like a specific topic or idea that you were considering?
Well, in Michigan, and I don't know how this compares with across the country, but in Michigan, we are allowed to do tax increment financing on brownfield plans for housing. And we've been doing a lot of presentations around Michigan on that, which has been very, very popular. And then I don't know if the Michigan chapter has presented at the national level yet on the zoning reform toolkit that they put together a couple years ago. I played a small part in that, but I was just trying to think of how we might be able to pair those together and talk about solutions. Everyone knows there's problems, but also talk about solutions. But then to kind of wrap this into you know, almost a third component, I was at a session a few months ago where one of the oh, what do you call her? She studies all of the demographics for the state. Sorry,
Mhm.
I'm losing her title right now, but anyway, she presented a lot of very, very valuable information and data showing that, you know, we need to look at what's coming down the pipe here. And, you know,
Mhm.
are we building too much in some locations, not enough in other locations? What do the numbers look like in schools and so forth? And that was just a very fascinating um, presentation that she put together. So I'm kind of tossing around some other ideas here. I would like our company to put something together for a
Mhm.
presentation, but I just haven't quite figured out what yet and who we would partner with. Open to partnering with anyone on this.
Yeah, I forgot you were in Michigan, and I don't know if the conference committee is going to do this again this year, but last year they had, Tippy, were you on the conference committee?
No, I wasn't on the conference
Okay.
committee.
They had these like they called them like local interest sessions or local focus or something, and they all like were, you know, events or topics that were like relevant to the conference location, which was Denver. But so I don't know if they're going to do that again, but if they are, like that definitely seems like, you know, something that people would probably be interested in since we'll be in Michigan, obviously.
Yeah.
So that
Trudy,
might
can I
be,
suggest,
yeah, go
can
ahead,
I
Margaret.
suggest something, Trudy?
Oh,
I'm
sure,
sorry, I didn't mean
absolutely.
to interrupt you, Caroline.
No, you're fine.
The Kinder Institute in Houston, Texas has just released their, I think it's fourth or fifth version of the housing report for Houston, chock full of demographic information about Houston. And one of the things that is so readily apparent in Houston that I think I talked to other people in the nation and that is happening as well is that we are still building too big a house. Our houses are too big.
Mhm.
And I know Houston's rules basically encourage bigger houses. You get benefit.
Right.
And so what we did in 2023 was we changed some rules to encourage smaller homes. We reduced parking requirements for smaller homes and accessory dwelling units and that kind of a thing. You might want to reach out to the Kinder Institute in Houston. Just
Okay.
Google there and look at their report. And if that seems like that's something that's interesting to you, I can connect you with them.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
I'll put my information in the chat.
Okay. And I agree. We're building too big
Yeah.
and people can't afford it. They don't want that.
Yeah, they don't want it and they can't afford it. And, 50% of Houston, 50% of the renters in Houston are single people, not families. And,
Wow.
even our affordable housing projects like the housing authority and that type of thing are all focusing on 3-bedroom, 2 baths.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why? So, I'd be happy to follow up this conversation with you, Trudy, if you wanted.
Yeah, that would be great.
I could just ignore this note taker in the chat too. I'm not sure what or who this is or how it's connected to our account, but it's giving us jobs and I don't like it.
I'm sorry, it's me,
Oh.
and she automatically invites herself. And
It's
if I
totally fine.
forget
I was like, but I don't
to take her out,
know.
yeah, it's me. I'm sorry.
No, that's totally fine. It's not an issue, but I was like, did I set this up? Is it called Tracy? Like, does it have like it has a name? I don't know.
They all have different, everybody has a
I
different name.
know. That's why I was like, wait a minute. Okay. But like other folks on the Women in Planning Division use this Zoom too. So I was like, did somebody set this up? I don't not like it. I just didn't know who it was. But I also didn't want people to feel like I was giving them things to do. So anyway, yeah, that's really interesting, Margaret. Thank you for bringing that up and thank you for making that connection. Other folks have ideas or questions or like, I don't know where to start or I have an idea but don't know who to coordinate with.
I was just gonna make a comment. I think it was Tippy mentioned data
Mhm.
centers,
Yeah.
and I don't know much about them at all, but I can tell you, especially in southern Michigan, it's kind of important. Communities are
Mhm.
studying them and trying to figure out what do we do with these? How do we zone for
Yeah.
them? Where are they coming in? So to me, that would be an interesting session, and I would definitely attend that. But I don't know much about it, so I can't help out with any kind of a session. But I hope we see one of those at the conference.
Yeah, Tibby, I was thinking that one and then also the fire one you were talking about, maybe reaching out to there's a technology division. They might, be interested or at least have folks who might want to like pick that up and or have speakers. And then the hazard mitigation division, I bet would be interested in supporting the fire ready or firewise development panel.
Oh, that's a great idea. I didn't even think about the tech division, so that's
I think
great.
they're small, but they're there.
Yeah. I think I was on a panel with their chair at least
Okay.
last year. So I have some contacts. So that's a great idea.
Nice.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure thing. Other thoughts?
I'll go.
Sure.
Tracy, and I'm a consultant that supports planning organizations and engineer groups and municipalities. And it's interesting that you also talked about partnerships because the last 2 years, that's what we've been doing is building those partnerships because they seem to be stronger when we're working in updated master plans, pros and those types of things, because to stay lean these days, you have really big engineering groups, and
Yeah.
then they get lost in stakeholder engagement or holding city leadership hands, and also holding the public accountable. And that sounds like harsh reality, but it is, because the public shows up and then they have to be accountable. So we've got a few things that we would love to present, around strategy and partnerships around that. But, being somewhat behind the scenes last couple of years with APA, and my husband's been a planner in perpetuity for 30 years, is that helpful? What can we bring to the table for partnership, for strategy, for creating, sustainable partnerships within communities?
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought there's like a lot of room in that it's like an area that really hasn't been explored for like how like municipalities or clients and consultants can like work effectively better, right? Like everything from like how do you craft like an RFP that like gets you the responses you want and need, to like how do you best communicate with your consulting team, to just like making those partnerships like that, even at that small level, like as efficient and like effective as possible. So like I think anybody who's like interested in picking that up and running with it, I think would be really interesting. Like I certainly, having been on both sides of those, that dynamic, would be interested. Because there's an art to it, right? Like, there's different interests and things are done differently. Like time frames are super different. Like how do you align those things? Like when you're, working on a private sector timeline and then a public sector timeline, which are like super diverse and divergent. So I think that's interesting. I'm not sure like exactly what kind of partnerships you were thinking about. Like, did you have additional info?
I just kind of coming from the lens of what we are currently and how we're currently partnering, but we also within partnering throughout the US as well, and what that looks like, and to help support, because sometimes it's hard to pick up the phone, right? So even here, it's very holistic, and everybody's like, well, call me, I've got this number. Everybody is like sharing, and it's taking that time, because we all put our head down and do the work, and then we put our head up, and it's like, where is everybody? So it's continually showing up to community. I'm in Montana, and where we're at, it's very internal focused. I'm actually in Missoula, and our city and municipalities will hire outside of the state because they feel that we don't have the skill set here. So then it's partnering in very smart ways, whether it's in-state or intrastate, so that everybody has a lens that's healthy, and we're creating sustainability within our communities.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. Figuring out how to like create and sustain those types of networks. I don't know that like I have a lot of, or I don't have any like real specific recommendations for how to go about that. But I certainly would be like interested, because I think the dynamic you're describing is not unusual. I'm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which is probably like similar, university town. We also like, I work for the town now, but used to be a consultant in North Carolina. And there's definitely like, a tendency to like hire, people from big cities, like not in North Carolina, which was always sort of unusual to me. So maybe it's like thinking about, and like, there's also a private practice division, API. I don't know if you're engaged with them at all. But like, thinking about how to market, consultants as like the best choice, right? Like in the communities that
Okay, I'll look into that. So thank you for listening. And also Jenny Dixon here in Missoula County, we had a Bitcoin energy exchange here. We had to change zoning for that, and then they left. So Jenny might be somebody to tap into here at Missoula County.
Awesome. In Montana?
Yep, Missoula County out of Missoula, Montana.
Missoula. Okay. Yeah, that's great. And with the chapters too, I know I have Erin, the Montana chapter president too. So if I can't reach her, I'll do you have an email also? I can ask you or Erin.
Yeah. And Aaron used to work in the same office with Jenny too, so he
Oh,
he would
awesome.
be a great resource if I can't get it to you. I know I have it in my phone. I just don't have my phone sitting here with me right now.
Hey, that's awesome. Thank you.
I don't know, is this a time to just offer an idea? I'm sorry, I missed a lot of the first
No,
part
you're
of this.
fine. It's
Okay.
recorded. You can go back and watch it if you want. We'll post it on the website.
Okay. Yeah, my question was, I'm thinking of submitting something around navigating, like in the topic area, navigating the political landscape, which probably will be a popular one. But we've had a variety of situations here, at least in Massachusetts, which probably seem like nothing compared to maybe other parts of the country. But I'm wondering if anybody else is potentially thinking about any topical or sessions in that category. I'm not sure what the structure of this, how you were structuring this conversation, but I just wanted to ask.
No, that's fine. This is just an open discussion. So, yeah, this is exactly what we wanted to do. Yeah, I mean, I also suspect that it will probably be a topic that is definitely relevant for sure, and maybe like comes up. I think, I don't know, like it's also sort of like a hard one to talk about, and I think there's probably people who are like hesitant and like not sure like where to go on it. I don't personally like have any sort of like insights, but I don't know if others on the call were thinking about anything similar. I guess not.
Maybe. I don't know. Somebody just shared a file.
I
Oh, no.
definitely like can keep my ears open though,
Yeah.
and let you know if we
Uh-huh.
do hear anything, or
Okay.
just, you know, if folks are throwing ideas around. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure like how it is going to be addressed. Like I, you know, obviously can think of like a lot of topics that are probably ripe for discussion. I mean, I know APA's had conversations around those topics too. They've been doing like these listening sessions over the last year. I'm not sure who's been coordinating those, but like maybe whoever that is would be a good person to like reach out to and be like, hey, what are you, you know, what are you hearing? Are there like voices that you're hearing more often? And, you know, maybe reach out to people who have been engaged in those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm sure that there's probably people who have things that they would want to bring. I just can't think of anyone off the top of my head.
Yeah. I've been submitting sessions over, I guess, the past 4 years now that are more like the 15-minute presentations because I haven't successfully found other people to join a panel. So that's why
It's
I thought I would
hard.
participate in this conversation to see if there's anybody else thinking
Yeah.
about that, and then I could try to see what would make sense.
Yeah. I mean, we could also like generically sort of put something out like on our divisions, you know, like social media or email to be like topic, be like, hey, if you're interested in this topic, you know, let us know and we can connect you like without, you know, blasting you like publicly.
Yeah.
Call
That's
Jennifer.
Yeah. Well, that's okay too, but yeah, that would work.
Okay, yeah, all right. And like we could definitely can do that and, you know, see if folks respond, and then do some like connecting of people, because that's kind of like what, you know, the purpose of this also was like, trying to make that process a little bit easier, because it is really hard to find people to get commitments to, like, you know, do all of that on top of like your other normal work and responsibilities. And
Yeah.
it can be, I think I said, herding cats a little bit, right? Like just trying to chase folks down. So
Okay. I appreciate
yeah, we can definitely do that. Like, I think maybe for some of these other topics too that have come up, like the mega events, I think that's really interesting. The housing, all of the child-friendly city model, just see if folks have like anything to contribute to like a potential panel or session, or even like, I don't know, some of them might be like a learning lab type of thing. If you want to like dig deeper into any of these. All right, well, cool. If does anyone else have anything they want to throw on the table? All right, well, I think we could wrap up. I'm gonna put our email in the chat so that if you think of anything else, please definitely reach out. I have your emails from registering for this webinar. Thank you. So we can connect with you. And I'll definitely, we'll throw some of this out into the world to see if folks are, if anybody has specific interest, as we're still in this lead up to session proposals. But hopefully this was helpful. We'll try to do this again in the future if folks found it to be useful. Like I said, we'll record this and post it on our website. So if anybody missed it, we can share it with them too. If you have questions, or like I said, if you want to, bounce a session draft off of anyone, we can, try to do some review. Or if you're like totally coming up short on speakers, we can help look for folks too. So just let us know how we can help.
Thank you. This was very helpful.
Good. All right, great. Well, thank you all so much. And thanks for taking the time in your afternoon to join. I appreciate it. And this was a great conversation. Thanks.